The first session of day three begins with an admonishment that journalists around the world hear often throughout their careers. Follow the money. In too many countries, funding for rare disease research and treatment is minimal or non-existent. And even when policies or funding does exist, connecting it to the people who need it the most is a persistent obstacle. Today, we'll hear from a health researcher and investigative journalist who has delved deeply into the rare disease policy realm in India. Rupsa Chakraborty is currently studying for her master's degree in global health policy at the at the London School of Economics. She has been a reporter and an editor at the Hindustan Times and the Indian Express. And she was also a 2023 NPF Rare Disease Reporting Fellow. You can read Rupsa's full bio on our website at nationalpress.org. Rupsa, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity for letting me to talk to the fellows from across the world and on a subject which is very close to my heart. And before I start with my presentation, just a hands up that I am very technologically handicapped. So if I really struggle with the technology, don't mind. And also, while talking about rare disease, I get really excited, and you might see me getting fired up and very animated. So please don't judge. So can I share my presentation now? Is it okay?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, one second. Yeah. So, as Rachel said that we are going to talk about the money. So, why we are talking about the money? Because rare disease, I believe, is one of the most neglected health aspect. We don't get funds from the philanthropies. We don't have enough funding for research, conducting research, life-saving research. So I'm going to talk about my reporting experience, and just to state here that I'm not an expert. I'm also a journalist. I'm learning on a daily basis. So I will just share my experience. And if you have, and we have a lot of thing to cover, and if you have any query, you can put it in the chat box or you can raise your hand. We will address it later. So to start with, so we know what is rare disease. I have seen the profiles of all the fellows here. We are all very well experienced. So this is just to give a brief of what is rare disease, and these are all estimated figure of people who are impacted or living with rare disease. But the real figures are much more, which are not being recorded, especially in global south. And when we talk about rare disease, no, rare disease has its own broad spectrum of rare disease, which are versatile. In India, we have 70 million, estimated 70 million people who are living with rare disease. So these are some of the policies. In France, they have the best infrastructure for rare disease patient, where they get free treatment, free medicine. Then also in United Kingdom, you have already spoken to Victoria Gray. She was the first patient who got treatment under CRISPR, and in UK, many people suffering from sickle cell disease are getting this expensive treatment free of cost, which is a distant dream for countries like India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, especially global south. So you can see Australia also has their own subsidized orphan drugs for the treatment of rare disease. Taiwan, Germany, France, they are doing really well in taking care and funding for the research for the rare disease treatment. So this is the holistic picture of the countries who are doing good and creating model for other countries to follow. Now I am from India. I have worked in India for over a decade. So I'm going to talk about India, which and the policies are also can also be reflected in other global south like Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Um, so in India in 2021, the government enacted this policy called rare disease policy, and it was very promising. It gave a hope to 70 million people who are living with rare disease. So under the scheme, the government has promised to give 50 lakh rupees, which is 60,000 pound, to the patient who are registered with their central government, with the central government. So the patient were divided in three categories. Group 1, who need one-time curative treatment therapies. Group 2, long term, but they need the treatment cost is much lesser. And group 3, long lifelong high cost disorders for which you need millions and millions of money every year. Now the problem started with a group 3 people whose treatment cost is really high, and they cannot be cured or live like a normal person, normal Indian, without having the daily or the annual treatment money flow. So, anyways, the government had started this three center of excellence, as we call it as COEs, in 13 different states in India, where if you go, if you're a patient with rare disease, you go and register with any of the centers. On policy, on paper, they were supposed to get this funding for their treatment. Okay, so you register with the center of excellence, then the rare disease hospital committee, they send your report or your application to the central government for the fund release, and you get the treatment. So this was the whole gist of the policy that was introduced, and it was very acknowledged, and people were really hopeful about this scheme. But it was only on paper. So fund did not reach the patients in time. We will talk about it in later. The allocation remained only on paper. So the 50 lakhs or the 60,000 dollar that they had promised didn't go to the patient because of the fund crunch. The government stated that they don't have enough fund to help the registered patient, and even with the fund that they have given to the central of excellence, only 30% of the funds were being utilized. 70% remain unutilized, and this is at the time when patients were really going to the centers begging the doctors to release the fund for the treatment of their children who were dying in front of their eyes. And the doctors were also helpless. They were completely dependent on the fund that were being released by the central government. So when we talk about tracking, I had filed several RTIs, which is right to information in India, under this application, you can, as an Indian citizen, you can ask for some documents and data from the Indian government. So we will talk about it in the later slide, just to give a gist for your understanding. So there is no module. So in my RTI response, the Indian government had stated that they are not maintaining the ledger of total number of applications they are receiving. So there is no centralized data form of understanding how many patient or how many patient actually need this life-saving fund from the government. And when we talk about crowdfunding, the Indian government has stated for the group 3 patient who need lifelong treatment and expensive treatment, the Indian government stated that we would start crowdfunding for them to help, so that the philanthropist or people whoever want to help the patient, they can contribute. But it is a complete failure. So far they have raised only 400 pound through crowdfunding, which is not enough to even help a single patient. Okay, so meanwhile, while the government was completely, the policy was completely a failure, many patients were suffering. Patients, children especially, have died while waiting for the fund to be released. So the group of parents and NGOs who are working for rare disease, they approach High Court, including Delhi High Court, Calcutta High Court, and different part of the High Court. Then they came together and filed a single petition with the Delhi High Court, requesting them to release the fund and increase the fund amount. And Delhi High Court took cognizance, and they also outlined that just because the funding is huge, it doesn't mean that you will stop the funding or you will not release the funding, because this affects a limited number of patients. So here comes the role of health as a human right issue. So being citizen of a country where we have the voting power, we are paying our taxes, everyone should be treated equally irrespective of the epidemiological significance or the spread of the disease. So the High Court gave a directive to the Indian Health Ministry to start a rare disease funding of 15,150 million dollar for the treatment of the patient. Okay, so this was very like the patient again got a new hope that we will be able to survive, we'll be able to provide treatment to our children. But Indian government made an appeal to the Supreme Court against this order. It has been 6 months now that the patient in India, they're not getting the fund that was supposed to be released for their treatment, especially in group 3, who are the most vulnerable ones. And this month on 7th or 9th, I think the last latest hearing, and in which the Supreme Court had again extended the hearing time, and they have pushed their hearing to next year in March. So you can understand that it has already been 6 months that this patient are not getting their treatment, life-saving treatment, okay? And they have to again wait for another 5 months to even know if they would be get the funding or not. So there are many children whose treatment has completely stopped. And when reporters had asked the question to the Indian Health Ministry, they only cited that we don't have the fund, we cannot provide money to so many patients. So here came my role as a reporter. So I started following the money through filing RTI, right to information. Now I got several information through right to information, and by reading hundreds and hundreds of copies of the court proceedings and affidavits, which gave very shocking details about the fundings. So to start with, so between 2021, when the policy was formulated, till last year, the government had given 12 million dollar to the Center of Excellence for the treatment of the patient, but of which only 5.42 million dollar were being utilized, which means only a minimal amount of money were being given to the patient who were really struggling. Especially most of these are children were struggling for their life. Okay, so the annual need of for the treatment of this patient is in it's a huge amount. It's almost 282 million dollar. Okay, but through right to information, I got to know that they had released only 191 crore, which is almost 125th of the requirement of the patient. And even from the 938 million dollar which were being allocated for the rare disease, didn't have anything to do deal with the awareness program. So the Delhi High Court had given an order to the health ministry that you need to spend a certain amount of money from your funding, from the given funding, to sensitize the people, because you need to understand, like in rural India where people doesn't have like farmers and agricultural people who don't know how to write in English or even to sign, they don't have the knowledge that such a funding is available which can help to make their children survive. So the government had asked them to spend on awareness campaign, and my through right to information, I found that they hadn't spent a single amount of money. So, out of the 570 registered LSD patient, most of which are again children, only 107 patient are receiving treatment. And by the time I had done the story, already the dropout rate of the 107 patient had already increased because of lack of funds. And as I told, the government had started this portal, and this crowdfunding portal has already registered 4,000 patients who are suffering from group 3 rare disease. And the government has been able to raise only 4 lakh rupees, which is around 400 pound. So as I said, while waiting for the fund, many children died. And one of the case studies that I have written for my story which would be published, I think, today or tomorrow, is about this child. So I had interviewed this child 2 years back for another story. Um, she was suffering from Gaucher disease. She was diagnosed at the age of 1, and her treatment required 1 lakh Indian rupees for her treatment, 2 enzyme injections per month. Her father is a farmer from Maharashtra. He sold his land. He sold his the only savings he had. He gave away his savings. He gave away his gold for the treatment of the child, and he really struggled a lot. He went from one hospital to another hospital for the diagnosis. Then after diagnosis, he again traveled for like 200 kilometers or so with the child just to get the fund, but he never got. And the child died this year. And this is the quote the father had given, that my only child died before my eyes because I couldn't afford the medicines. So this was one case study. I'm sorry, I'm citing this as case studies, but these are all real life patients who are dying because of fund. So there's another child who also died this year. So in his case, he was diagnosed at the age of 2, but he had to wait for 7 years just to get a therapy. So his father, who was working with a multinational company, he approached the High Court, Delhi High Court, and after a fight for almost years, he got the treatment from a pharmaceutical company through a clinical trial. But it was already too late. His organs were already being damaged. So at the age of 13, he passed away this year. So his father has now started an NGO to help other patient and children suffering from rare disease. So while speaking with me, he said that by then his body had already suffered irreversible damages. He passed away 5 years later. This shows how critical it is to start the treatment early. So because the children are not getting the treatment, or this, in many cases their treatment haven't even started because of lack of fund, their body is undergoing irreplaceable changes. Even if they start the treatment later, their body wouldn't be able to recover the damage that is already being done. And this is one more case. The child is also suffering from Gaucher type 1. So she was diagnosed during lockdown. Her father is also very poor economic background. They couldn't afford the treatment, so they filed a petition with Calcutta High Court. They got a funding, but now they have already hit the cap of 50 lakhs rupees. So the Indian government has refused to release any more fund because they have raised their hand. I said, like, we have already given you the fund, so we can't do anything. If your child is dying, it's not our responsibility. They have completely refuted the human right needs, that we are also human beings. These are also children, Indian citizens who are dying. So this child, it's been almost 8 or 9 months, I think. Her treatment has stopped, and she has already developed hearing loss. She has developed almost 80% hearing loss because her treatment has stopped. So this is the code that her father was going. Without therapy, I'm watching her to go back to where she was. And these are all real life case studies. So this is one investigation that I have done. If you have any query or anything, you can ask me. Does anyone have any in the chat box, right?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. So this is one story that I have worked upon, which was the real life death of the children because of lack of fund. So as you know that I have already like, I was in 2023, I was a fellow of the same fellowship that you are doing. So during the fellowship, I had done several stories. I have listed some of the stories here. So, like sickle cell disease, aplastic anemia is one of the blood disorder which are categorized under rare disease. So, in India, what happens for sickle cell, even for aplastic anemia, there is no cure as such other than bone marrow transplant. But in India, especially in bigger cities, like in Maharashtra or Uttar Pradesh, there is no bone marrow transplant facility for elder patient. So patients are literally again dying because the Indian states or state government doesn't have bone marrow transplant facility for adults. So this was one story I had done. The second one is about Nandurbar. I know I have a friend, Shailaja. I have worked with her in Maharashtra. She's from Maharashtra and she's a very good reporter. She's part of the fellowship, so she would know. So in Nandurbar, there's an indigenous community, and in sickle cell is very common among indigenous community, tribal population, as we say. And when I had visited this. Rural area, it's a very far north, it's very far western side of Maharashtra, in the border of Gujarat. So most of this tribal dominated area, 80%, not 80%, at least 70% of the population have sickle cell anemia, and they develop deformities, and even many died because in rural hospitals they didn't have even basic medication like folic acid or even pain reliever. And as they don't get access to the treatments, many of the patient, even younger children, had developed deformities in their legs, in their hands. And in sickle cell anemia, you often get internal blood injuries or inflows. So in that cases, it's very important to have blood transfusion. But when I visited this seven districts in this seven villages in this district, none of the villages had blood banks. So in case of emergency, they have to travel or run for like for 40 kilometers or 80 kilometers just to get a reach a blood bank. And then even often in many cases, even after reaching the blood bank, they find out that they don't have the blood of their blood group. And one thing I would really request the fellows to follow is that there is no, like across the world, there is a lack of data on fatalities related to rare disease. So what happens when a patient, for example, Pompe disease, if a patient dies from Pompe disease, it's mostly cardiac arrest or stroke. So in the death certificate, they normally write cardiac arrest or stroke as their cause of death, but they never ever mention that the child primary cause of death was because of rare disease. So in India, we don't have any registry. If fellows from India can investigate into the matter, filing RTI or from your sources from the health ministry, how many people are on paper actually dying from rare disease? The number is huge. I can also help you to get in touch with the NGOs who are working for this, because there are young children who are as young as 1 year or 2 year old who have died because of sickle cell disease, because you get blood clot in your brain. But these are all classified as stroke. So if you can, anyone can look into it. And the third story I had done about Nidhi, she was the India's first diagnosed Pompe disease. She spent all her life on wheelchair, and her father had started the first NGO on rare disease. You might know him also, Prasanna. So it was about his daughter who was first diagnosed Pompe disease patient, and they took them for about 10 years for her to get the diagnosis. And again they had to sold their property. They completely got bankrupt for her treatment. But again she died in 2023, and even on her death certificate, it was the brain stroke which was cited as the cause of death. And just to give a quick story idea, is that her brain was donated to brain bank in Bangalore. So there is Bangalore has started a bank called Brain Bank. So they are taking the brains of patient who was suffering from different kind of diseases, rare diseases, after their disease, so that they can run their genetic not experiments, but research on their brain to understand how patient to patient, depending on their rare disease, their brain functioning or their molecular change according to their disease. So if anyone can follow, I can also help you to get in touch with the professor who is running the project in Bangalore. It's a very rare kind of project. And the third was that despite help from center, patient with rare disease can suffer a lot. So this story I had done in 2021, when the Indian government had started this rare disease policy, and I had shown like how the families are going bankrupt. They have to spend a lot on diagnosis. So under the policy, the Indian government had said that they would give a huge amount of fund to this center of excellence so that they can develop their own infrastructure lab, so that they can undergo the diagnosis or treatment test under one lab, so that don't have to send the samples from one city to another, which is very expensive, especially for people who are farmers, who are agricultural, who cannot even fund their or cannot even arrange their daily meals. They don't have to spend their savings or land for the treatment, but not a single amount has come from the Indian government to start this state of art infrastructure for this early diagnosing and laboratory work. So yes, any questions?
My goodness, there are so many terrific questions. If you would unshare, why don't we get started on that? And the first one comes from Simon Spishak. Please introduce yourself to Rupsa and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Simon. I'm a journalist based out of Canada. I do a lot of work on dementia, and then I dabble in some work in Canada, which sometimes involves filing these public information requests. I want to thank you for all of your thorough and diligent reporting. These stories are absolutely heartbreaking. Now, I was wondering if you ran into any difficulties accessing the public documents that you were filing for and how you navigated those problems. Here in Canada, we have a similar process, which is, the bane of my existence. We face a lot of delays, unnecessary redactions, and sometimes we need to file formal complaints to get documents that should be public. So I'm wondering if you can share some tips for us for filing and obtaining these documents.
Okay, so we already have a section where we will discuss about the problems that I had faced while covering the rare disease issues. But just to quickly respond to that, yes, I had to struggle a lot, a lot. Like, I have filed around 10 RTIs, of which I had gotten response of 3. For the remaining 7, of which I filed first appeal for 3 more. Then I got response from 2 of them, but it took me around 6 months to do the investigation, because I wanted to do a thorough investigation, especially on data. Because whenever I, like, even previously when I was doing the story, I would reach the government for their comment and all. They would always say that there is nothing, it's all fake, the NGOs are just saying wrong thing, nothing is happening. So I really wanted to collect the data so that they can never refute the claims of a journalist and the problems that are happening on ground. But yes, one thing I would suggest is that be very persistent, keep filing RTIs, and in many cases, like in my case, because the doctors were really helpless. Okay, they were seeing the patient who were dying, they were begging them. So many of the doctors from Delhi, from Maharashtra, they had given me very in-house documents, off record of course, but they do help a lot.
Let's go to Shalaja.
Hi, Rupsa. How are
Hi
you?
Shailaja.
I'm good. I just want to know that Rupsa, as India has already started a registry for rare diseases, but I want to know that how this registry is transparent. Means the register the patient through only CU or any other method, and across India it registered the patient or not yet.
Okay, so the register is only for group 3 patient. Okay, so when we say that we have an estimated of 70 million patients, so they're not taking the registration from group 1 or group 2. It is only for group 3. Okay, and the registration can only happen from this 13 center of excellence. So, for example, if a person from Gujarat wants to make a registry in the center of excellence, there is no center of excellence in Gujarat. So, the patient from Gujarat come to Maharashtra, even patient from Rajasthan, they come to Maharashtra, which is kilometers away, with their sick children for to make the registration. So in the court hearing, one of the affidavit, the NGOs have also requested the government to start this center of excellence in across all the districts, or at least in all the states, so that this better accessible, and the patient who are really sick, like who is puking, who is falling sick, fainting, they don't have to carry them all the way to the center of excellence for the diagnosis and registration. So you can also check it up, like patient from Rajasthan, and their information are all available on the registry. Their contacts numbers are also there.
Great. Sharon, you have a long question, but if you could summarize it for Rupsha, please do.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Rupisa. My name is Sharon Muzaki.
Hi.
Based in Uganda. I contribute to Nature Africa. Maybe just to summarize, like Richard said, what do you think is that single thing that is overlooked by us journalists, those outside, like we don't fully understand about rare disease policy failures in the global south? Maybe that is. What is that we do not understand?
Uh, as we say, rare disease is called orphan disease because very limited people or patients are being affected. So even the government or the pharmaceutical companies really don't care. So
Okay.
while doing this story, I had to go through all these affidavits that were also being filed by the pharmaceutical companies. So in one of the affidavit, in a very heart-wrenching statement, one of the pharmaceutical companies had stated that if we make these drugs after investing a lot of money, millions of dollars in our research, our profit level will be really less, right? Because the number of patients are affected are less, and they would not be able to profit from this. So they are not considering the human right angle in health, where they are only looking after their profit in for pharmaceutical company and for the government also. They say that non-communicable disease like diabetes, cardiac arrest are more important, where people are more affected. Like for example, in one of my classes, my professor had told me that philanthropists like Bill Gates would never be interested to invest in funds on rare disease, because here the outcome is very late. It takes years of research. So these are, I think, the funding and also the intention to save the life of the people who are less affected, like the population number, is the most important thing.
Let's go to Asako.
Hello, Rupsa. My name is Asako, and I am a journalist based in Japan. So thank you for sharing your wonderful work. It seems like your reporting exposes that government negligence and the failure of the society. So I was wondering, what has been the most challenging barrier you've faced while covering these topics, and how did you deal with it? So I bet you must have faced, was it like government resistance or difficulty working with the patient organizations or lack of funding when doing the investigative reporting?
Okay, so my biggest challenge was accessing data, because see, I believe in quantitative research. So to prove a point, I need data. So because when I have data, authentic data, there is no way that the government can deny it. And I have always done journalism so that I can bring some change in the society. So previously also, when I have done very qualitative research, which were most basically on interviewing the family members, or data that were being compiled by the NGOs, the government didn't take any cognizance. Okay, they didn't react. They said only 4 people have died. You don't have the data to show 100 people have died. Okay, So that really made me angry. So I decided to focus on data, then of course correlate with the case studies, court proceedings and all. And yeah, and also the acceptance among the policymakers is very less, because again, less people are affected, and their treatment cost is huge. They want to use this 1 million pound for the diabetic patient rather than focusing on a treatment which is very limited significance spread. So, yes, and also convincing my editor, because I will talk about this in the following slide. Convincing my editor was a big challenge, irrespective of the newsroom where I have worked, because they always think rare disease means something like 4 kg tumor has been removed from a stomach, or someone has eaten hair. So they don't understand the concept of rare disease. So yeah, convincing editor was one of my biggest struggle.
I want to go to Precious. Introduce yourself and ask your question. Perhaps her internet is not working. She wanted to know.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you
Yes,
now.
yes.
All right. Good afternoon. I want to say thank you, Rupsa. The stories you shared, they were very enlightening, and I got to learn a lot. But I want to ask, how were you able to get the sources? Okay, sorry, my name is Precious One. I'm from Nigeria, a journalist from Nigeria.
Hi.
So I want to understand, how were you able to get these sources? Because where I practice here in Nigeria, sometimes it's kind of difficult getting the sources. I have to go to the health centers in communities to meet with health workers. But then again, it's kind of difficult, but I would like to know other means, ways on how to get this and what's it called, and the sources, the patients that have this rare disease, most especially because it's not easy getting them around. So I would like to have and get your idea on how to get sources.
Okay, so this also we will talk about in the later slide. I have made a separate slide, your sources for rare disease. But in my cases, my first contact was the Center of Excellence in Maharashtra, in KEM Hospital. The doctor there was, as I said, was helpless. So doctor first gave me a tip off that this is happening, children are coming, we are not able to do it. And there are also protests done by the parents in front of the hospital. And then my secondary source were the NGOs who are filing this petition, were making this report and submitting to the Indian government. And my third source of information were the lawyers who were filing this petition, and also submitting the documents to the Indian Health Ministry for their response. And one more thing, when as I said, as a reporter, my intention has always been to have impact for my stories. Otherwise, there is no point of doing story just to see your byline. So in many cases, and I also tell this to the Indian journalist here, in many cases for stories like rare disease or climate change, which are very neglected, you will never see any response or taking any response from the Indian government. They wouldn't care about this stories. So what I had done in my case, I had gathered this information earlier for another story. Not so much information, but I had some information and case studies. So I wanted to file a petition with the Indian High Court, High Court in Mumbai. But due to my newsroom's policy, I couldn't do it. But I did file a petition with the National Human Rights Commission, and after which 4 of the people in Maharashtra got fund because of the petition that I had filed. So in cases where you don't get any response or direct impact of your story, you can always use this kind of platforms to get impact of your stories.
I'm going to take one more question and then we'll let you complete your slides, and that would be from Evans.
Hello, Rupsa.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the detailed presentation. I've got one question that I would want to ask. Given that some countries like Zimbabwe lack legislation specifically addressing rare diseases and its funding, they rely on outdated laws and acts that incorporate rare diseases into Disabled Persons Acts. You understand? So, what steps do you recommend for journalists to take to influence policymakers to modernize the legal framework, formally document rare diseases in Zimbabwe, and also ensure that there is adequate funding and inclusive social services for people living with such conditions?
So in
Thank
India
you.
also we have the same problem. So patients suffering from sickle cell disease were supposed to get disability certificate and also funding from the Indian government. This is not happening. Okay, many people are struggling. Okay, but what I would suggest is that do a comparative study. For example, like in France, they do get this certificate of disability and they also get benefits in government jobs and all. So talk to some case studies or patient who have benefited through this scheme in France and do a comparative analysis of the people from your country who are not able to get the benefit and how their life is being impacted. So, for example, I am from France. I have sickle cell disease with disability certificate. So, I have a government job. I am able to fund my treatment and I am having a normal life. Same way from your country, you get a case study of a person who is really struggling even to get fund or buy medication, and how if Zimbabwe has this policy in your country, how it could have benefited the patient. But it would be important if you have the number of data, like for example sickle cell, how many people could have benefited, because number is very important. I will talk about it because convincing your editor is important, and now everything has become business, how many clicks you are getting on your story. So it's very important to show how many would get affected.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Why don't you move to the rest of your presentation?
Yes, and I will share the slide. So my biggest problem was convincing my editor, who had no idea what is rare disease. So every time I would go with a story on rare disease, he would say, rare disease, who cares? Who reads? And so yes, I really struggled to convince him. So I have pointed out these 6 pointers that we will discuss with case studies, how it helped me. And also again, I'm learning. I'm working as a independent journalist while studying. So I am still struggling. I had to send my story pitch to 10 people and one responded. So yes, I'm also struggling. So if you have any suggestion, please do give it to me. So the first is give human faces, okay? So editors or readers don't care if you just write about rare disease, okay? So you have to give human faces. Like for example, I had done this story during the fellowship. I hope it opens. Yes. So I had made it very human interest, like how this child, if the twins fall asleep, though they would die. So I had given very human angle to it, which helped me to really convince my editor, and who was like, oh, the child would die if they fall asleep. Okay, 1 second, now I can't find my PPT. So this is in the side you can see there is one more case study, which also shows, which has a very human angle to the story, how the child in a rare condition and every time is ticking. And this is also a story from India, how they need 2 million, I think 2 million pound for the treatment of the child. So give human angle. The second point being give the shocking line. So I know in your previous station you have been told how to be sensitive towards these patient families even while interviewing. But as by my experience, I think you have to give very shocking value to the stories while being very sensitive towards the subject. In many cases, when I was doing some stories like this, where I had to like literally utilize it's the uniqueness of the case to give the headline or to sensitize it in a way so that readers can read, because this is how the world function. I'm really sorry, but that's a reality. So I did take permission from the parents that I am going to give this headline. It may look very sensationalized, but this is how people would click and read about it, and you might get some funding from the people who become involved in the case, or like the case study or the plight of the people want to give funding. So this is one story again from India. I think it was being done by Guardian. So it's like about this 14-year-old boy suffering from a rare disease who had 100 bone fractures. So if I just go to my editor and say that this child is suffering from some rare disease, so every time he walks, he breaks a bone, you wouldn't have interested. So this is story not done by me, but another reporter. So if you go to your news editor, okay, and give this striking pointers that a child with 100 bone fractures is still living because of the rare disease, he would again get involved in the story. Because again, to be very frank, be it Guardian, be it BBC, I'm sure there are other reporters who would also agree with me, everything has become very digitalized and everything is being monitored. How many clicks you are getting on your stories, how many people are reading your stories, to what length they are reading your stories. So it's very important to also know to how to sell stories, especially in cases like rare disease and climate change. Okay, and also I had cited this case study of a family where the parent lost all the three children because of the similar rare disease case. So they had done a thorough interview of the family with the pictures and interviews of the family members, how helpless they were when they saw all their three children die in front of their eyes. So these are all hooks to your stories. Please function. Okay, yeah. And again, the economic angle, we had already spoken about it. Just to give one more example, so this is a very good story. So Supreme Court had asked why the cost of drug for SMA, okay, which is very expensive, which again comes in the group 3, is so expensive in India, and it's more expensive in India than Pakistan and China. So in especially in China, they are developing these drugs, indigenous drugs, which are much more lesser expensive, and also research have shown that they are quite promising than the available drugs in India, which are expensive. And even in this case, we have in the headline, you can see that they have given the headline of 2.1 million drug to fight rare disease. So yes, so pharmaceutical is something that I think editors are really very interested in, either because of love or because of hatred, but they are very much interested. Time proximity. Okay. So this is very, very important. Okay. Now, because of sensitization and better diagnose, you will see that many celebrities or even known people are being diagnosed with rare disease. So always use this opportunity to sensitize people, write your stories around it. So I had done this story on Victoria Grace. I will not click on it because I will again struggle to find my PPT. So just from the headline, you can understand. So in 2023, when I was a part of this fellowship, again, Victoria Gray was being invited to give a talk, and that time exactly, I think that month only, UK government had approved CRISPR therapy as a treatment to treat sickle cell patients, okay, patient with sickle cell. So I use this proximity and time proximity, and I published her interview, and it was on the front page story across the nation, like how UK approves the gene therapy for sickle cell anemia, and we know that India, we have the second highest burden of sickle cell patient. So how this expensive therapy could be developed indigenously in India, and how it can benefit patient, like lakhs of patients from sickle cell anemia in India. So this I had utilized. And even like we know about Donald Trump crackdown across the world in health. So this is a very interesting story. You can write down the headline and read it later. Is about how, because of the fund crackdown on foreign grants, patient treatment of rare disease are being affected. In fact, if anyone from US can do a story on like many of the clinical trials for rare disease are also been impacted because of this crackdown. So if you can like to investigate that for the fellowship. And again, science is something that always intrigues us, be it a 5-year-old kid or be it my father. Everyone likes to read science fiction, or not science fiction, but sciencey things. So if you have anything going on in your country, like the government is developing some indigenous CRISPR therapy, which will be very cost effective, help with 90% survival rate. Please follow the scientists. They will, at least in India, they will not talk openly. Even to get an interview, you have to send an email to their institution, then get the approval. Then even if they talk to you, they will ask you to send their interview before publishing. But they do talk many things off record, because I know there is a scientist in India who is doing a genetic study on mini brains. Okay, so mini brains is something like peanut shaped brains. So they genetically develop it, and then they are running this genetically engineering experiments on these mini brains to understand many rare diseases in India. Because in rare disease patient, like we have one, like I spoke about the brain bank in Bangalore, and this one is in Delhi, where I think it's in the first phase. So you can like get in touch with me. I will be able to help you with the contact of the professor. So yes, science is a very interesting thing, and they also interest our editors. Okay, so we all know about solution journalism. This is not exactly an example of solution journalism, but it's also important to give something good that is happening. If the government is doing anything, patient advocacy group are doing anything, like in this case in UK, millions were invited for early diagnosis of their possible rare genetic disorder. And also how a blood test developed could speed up diagnosis in rare disease cases in babies. So do keep an eye on the scientist, as I say, and also on their website. Follow their websites. Okay. So my challenge is in covering rare disease. Okay. Of course, as I already spoken about, accessing data, because I very much believe in compiling data. I have mostly worked in data sector, like data journalism, because once you have the data, there is no way that the government can refute your claim, and also you can approach Human Rights Commission, or your material can also be used for filing petition, because data never lies. Okay. So yes, the officials were very tight-lipped, because some of them didn't care, and some were obligated not to talk to the reporters like me. But again, at the local level, the doctors from the Center of Excellence were really helpful. They gave me many documents. They gave me access to the fund. They had sent application that they had sent to the central government, but the central government refuted the application. They refused to give the fund. So I did have access to those documents from the given by the local doctors. Okay. So third point, choosing case studies. So when I was doing this story, it was really tough to choose my subject, right? Whom I am going to show in my story, because I know 50 children whose fund have been stopped, and all of them are slowly dying. So whom do you choose? So I prioritize, because I was very confused and ethically, I didn't know whom to prioritize in my story. But yes, I chose patients who were most vulnerable, especially from poor economic background, and whose health were progressing faster than, sorry, whose deterioration was progressing faster than other patients. So yes, choosing case study was important. And impact of the story, as I said, that in rare disease cases, it's very tough to get direct impact and immediate impact, which we see for other stories. So I did approach Human Rights Commission, because I couldn't file a petition because of the policy at my newsroom. But yes, impact of the story was very convincing. My editor I had already spoken about. Okay, last slide, I think. Yes, I think I have spoken already too much. So primary source for journalists covering rare disease, policy documents. Okay, please read the policy documents. Okay, in India, the national rare disease policy is like 100 page, not 100 page, at least 50-60 pages. Read everything from start to the end. Okay, you will find many pointers, like they were supposed to start the lab, which never happened. They were supposed to provide money for their transportation from one district to another, never happened. So if you read policy paper of your respective government, you will find many things which is not being implemented. People are still suffering because of those are not being implemented. So you can always follow up on those points. At least you will have a starting point. Okay. NGOs and parent group, okay, do get in touch with them. They are very important, but of course, they are also very sensitive towards this topic. So you will always have to cross check the claims that they are making, the documents that they are providing you. Just don't blindly believe whatever they are saying. You have to cross check as a journalist. Court reports are the most important thing. If there is a court petition that is happening, even if an independent case, please get access to the court paper, that you can easily contact the lawyers there, because the government in response give a lot of affidavit, and where they provide a lot of unpublished data, which even through RTI they will not be able to sharing with you. So code records are very important. Scientists again have already spoken. They will not go on record. At least in my case, they didn't go on record, but they will give you information what is happening, because I know one scientist again from Delhi, the national capital of India. He is struggling to get fund to develop indigenously develop CRISPR therapy for sickle cell patient. It's been almost 2 years that he hasn't received the fund from the Indian government for the research. So if you can expand it and do a study like how much Indian government is spending for the research. I understand that you don't have the fund to provide their treatment costs, but at least if you are doing anything to find an alternative for their care and life-saving procedures, so you can do a story on that. And also Scholar, Google Scholar is very important. Okay, you will get many published articles on Google Scholar. You can contact the professors, they always give their email ID, so please do contact them. Again, off record, they will help you a lot. So yes.
This has been absolutely brilliant presentation. I think the journalists have benefited tremendously. I want to, although there are many interesting questions that they have, I would like to give the last opportunity to Marcia from Brazil, because she has a very interesting question to pose to you. Marcia, are you there? She may have stepped away. But she was wondering, let's see if I can find it. Once you've done the reporting, once you've told the stories, what's the next step? How do you follow up?
Yeah, I follow up. I do follow up. I literally fight with my editors and I do follow up, even if they are not letting me write the story. I do off record. I do like push the officers to do something. But it's not as a journalist, but as a human being.
That's a perfect way to end this conversation. I think so many of us pursue journalism because we want to amplify voices and help people feel as if they are being heard or their concerns are being heard. So you have given us, again, a brilliant primer and lesson in how to do this in the rare disease realm. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Rupsa Chakraborty.
And also you can share my email ID if anyone has any doubt or any query. I can always help them with this, even for the like stories from Indian angle, if anyone wants to get in touch.
Thank you so much, Rupsa.
Thank you so much, and all the best. This is a very fantastic fellowship. This is my bestest fellowship, if I can say. So please do enjoy it.
Take care and stay warm. I'll be in touch with you.
Yeah, bye.